Poi and art in general is subjective. A lot of what we describe as being the best boils down to opinion and preference. With that being said, in my humble opinion, Juggler is currently the best poi juggler of all time. His exploration into poi juggling is nothing short of spectacular. Thank you so much for the support. This one really does mean a lot to me. Enjoy the episode, my friends, and welcome to the Poidcast. Juggler, the man, the myth, and the poi legend. Thank you for coming on the podcast, man. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you on as a guest. So thank you for being a part of the project. Take us back to when you first got introduced to poi. How and when did that happen?
All right. So the first time I got introduced to poi was through. So basically, I was already into juggling, and I was trying out all of the prop that this one skill toy brand that I got my first props from was selling, and there was like Diabolo, Devil Stick, like all the stuff. And poi, there was like this kind of like like the silk poi, kind of like very squishy silk poi thingy. And that was like the last one on my list to buy. I was like, I just want to try everything because I'm curious, but that one sounds lame. But still, I ended up like trying it out, and I mean, it was what it is. I think I learned like 3-bit weave and probably butterfly or something. And I was like, fair enough, good. Just pack that up and just go back to playing Diabolo and juggling. Until for some reason I discovered, probably online or some other juggling shop, that there was the contact poi version, like that was just a ball, a string, and another ball. And I was like, oh, that's a bit better. And so I gave that a try, and I think I just ended up learning like 2.1 hand stuff. So basically, for like the first year or two of poi that I had, I was able to do some basic spinning like weave and four poi double weave like this, and I was just like, yoo-hoo! But still, I was like not convinced. I was like, okay, that's a bit more fun, but still, I didn't like it.
So, and did you learn any kind of like flower patterns or anything like that?
I can't remember. I know that I learned actual anti-spin flowers very, very late. Like you can even go back on my Instagram. I was already posting for a while that at some point I posted like, oh, I can do 4-petal anti-spin now.
I have gone all the way back on your Instagram.
I'm pretty sure at that point I could already juggle like 3.0 bits and stuff when I actually learned to do properly 4-point anti-spin. 4-petal anti-spin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned flowers.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
I think I learned 2.1 hand meteor style stuff quicker, like first, and then the flower stuff was very late.
So interesting because, y'all know at home that this is not the way that typically happens. Usually we learn anti-spin flowers and all the weaves and fun stuff, and then we get into the more serious things like juggling, but you were already a juggler at that point. So had you just been juggling balls mainly, or were you a club juggler ever as well?
So yeah, I started with Diabolo. I don't know if you know what Diabolo is. Diabolo is this kind of like double cup with an axis with a string, just for people out there that don't know, because I know in the States it's not super famous. It's getting there. Anyway, so I was doing that a bunch. I just saw it on TV at some point when I was like 11 or something, and I was like, Dad, I want this. And my dad was like really happy to buy that for me instead of like a Nintendo or like a new Pokemon game.
Sure.
He didn't know that it would grow that much into something way bigger.
Yeah, seriously.
And I obsessed on like Diabolo for like a good 7 years. And it's only like, 5-6 years into Diabolo, and also like along with Diabolo, I picked up very quickly like ball juggling and club juggling at the same time. That was kind of like secondary stuff. At some point, as I said, I tried out poi. But yeah, Diabolo, clubs, and balls were the first.
And the whole progression is very interesting to me because in the poi world, as I'm sure you're aware, we've lost many of the high caliber poi spinners that were kind of like pushing tech poi or 3-poi and whatever they went and they migrated to club juggling. So tell me why you have stayed on poi juggling and you didn't like go and just do the club juggling thing, because you could be an incredible club juggler. I'm sure you're already very good, but with the amount of time that you could have put into clubs, you have put into poi. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so funny. Before, remind me if I just go off track, but like just like fun side note. when I met Wyatt for the first time, like 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, yeah, I'm so excited to meet that club juggler. I like what he does and everything. And I had no clue he was a like a poi spinner beforehand. It took me
Yeah.
like, I think it's only like a year after I realized, oh yeah, actually Wyatt was famous for his
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And when I met him, I was like, yeah, he's just gonna hang out with a great club juggler.
Yeah.
Whatever. But so yeah, it's a funny transition in deep, because most poi spinner just ended up doing club juggling. And for me, I was like so set on like, I'm gonna be a diabolo juggler, and diabolo was the main thing. Ball juggling, club juggling was really just like a side thing. Just whenever I would get bored of diabolo, I would just work on basic, like not do that much original stuff, much more like numbers, just like 5, 6, 7 balls and 5 clubs. And so yeah, diabolo was my main thing, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a diabolo player. And then at some point I picked up poi, and I realized I was way better at it. So I just grieved my diabolo career.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, so you just leaned really hard into poi, you know.
Yeah. Not that I was bad at diabolo either, but like, yeah, poi somehow clicked way more. And then I slowly like understood that I was better at it, and it felt better, and everything was working better, so why not? And it wasn't that much different from diabolo. There is still like a rope string, like not too far.
And I mean, I'm guessing that you saw poi in where it was in poi juggling specifically and thought to yourself, wow, there's a lot of room for exploration. Whereas with clubs, there still is, and there's balls there. Of course, still is. There's infinite potential in any of these things, right? But with poi, very few people were actually pushing poi juggling at a level that you were already probably at with ball juggling or what have you. So I'm sure that you saw a lot of potential there.
Yeah, definitely. For me, the first person I met actually that's like really opened my eyes. I was like, oh, okay, there is like so much more with poi. Is Theo Azoulay, for the Symmetrix person. And yeah, and he's the first person I met that was like trying to juggle. I think when I met him for the first time, he was like already doing a few tricks with free poi juggling, and that's where I was like, oh, actually, let's give a try to poi again. Because at that point, I was still like, nah, poi is not that good. And Theo is like really the guy that I saw do poi, and I was like, okay, there is more. Let's give it a try again. So yeah, without Theo, I wouldn't be here. I think like with poi, I would probably still do like ball juggling or diabolo. I don't know.
Thank you, Theo. Good job for bringing in a legend into the community. That's amazing. So, and that kind of leads me into my next question. You have a very innovative and like a trailblazer type mindset to juggling. At what point do you think you decided that I'm going to pursue this thing and not necessarily anything else, like aside from really one track mind into poi? Like, what point do you think that was at?
That's a hard question. So I think in general, ever since I was born, when I would do something, I just do it 1,000% or 0. It's like either like I had this weird thing of like, for me, when I was like 11, I decided I would learn Spanish. 2 months later, I could speak Spanish. I decided I didn't like English though. It took me 6 years to decide that I would learn English. And then once I had decided this, I could learn English the next summer. I could speak English the next summer. So in general, like every single things I do, with whether it is diabolo or like juggling in general, from the start I was like, yeah, I'm giving my entire time and focus to that because I know it's worth it, and I have faith that it's like the thing I can do and I want to do. So yeah, there wasn't, and then there was this like switch of focus. Okay, no, I do it specifically with poi. But overall, I was really set from the start. Juggling is my thing.
I love that. And you were already a juggler. So, and going back to the time when you were getting more involved into poi and learning more about it, did you look up to any of the other artists that were doing things with like two poi, or that were, not juggling poi? Did you have any of those people that you really looked up to?
Yeah. So it was very funny because like I spent such a long time like actually practicing poi and still not really being interested in the poi community, and just mainly like looking up to like club jugglers and diabolo players and everything. I had of course seen some of Cyril's videos, ᴍᴜליᴜᴜ. And yeah, I was like, for sure, this is amazing. But somehow it took me a while to like let it sink in and realize how good it was.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't think it was good. Like just somehow took me a while.
You still
And
have the juggling mindset. Viewing 광 is different because you didn't
yeah,
necessarily do 광 at that
yeah.
time.
Plus
Yeah.
at that time also, I think my level wasn't like, I wasn't deep enough in poi to understand or refined what Cyril was doing yet. And I was like more interested in like more basic, like when I would see like more basic stalls and spinning and a few throwing, I was already like, oh, okay, that's already cool and that's a lot. Versus Cyril was already like too far for me,
Yeah.
which I think that's why it took me a while. But yeah, and I guess my main inspiration actually from the start was Theo and Armin Teschner.
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah, and of
You
course
know,
Tim as well, of course, because like from the start I think I saw Tim as well.
Tim, yeah, Tim is we'll get more into Tim when we talk about Australia, but yeah, Theo is actually a guy, excuse me, Armin is actually a guy that I've only recently heard of. So it's
But
interesting
yeah,
that you were already kind of connected to this guy and seeing, his art before you had really seen a lot of other people's. So that's great. I don't even think I viewed this video all the way through.
it's a pretty short video. It's a very cool edit. Yeah. Funnily, like the fun thing is that it's made like the editing and the filming is a Diablo player, a friend of mine as well.
And this is in Berlin, so you're familiar with these spots, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, that was like filmed way before I moved to Germany. That was
That's right.
I think that's like 2018. It's really really old. Yeah, Armin at his time, Armin and Dima Omsky, a bit less well known. The both of them, they were like pushing poi juggling like alone, and no one had any idea. Yeah, funnily enough, he is the first person with Dima to juggle 5 poi wall plane and like push it to like 30, 35, 37 catches. And him and
Wow.
Dima Omsky separately worked on 5 poi wall plane without knowing each other at the same time, which I think is kind of funny.
Oh my gosh.
So like they both got the same idea of like, yeah, 5 poi makes sense in this wall plane pattern with doubles and spins. Let's do that.
I think it's really interesting when people are able to find and stumble across these patterns simultaneously without knowing that the other person is working on it, because I have on a smaller level with different various ⴑ things or what have you, whatever it was, I've created something in my mind. I've created it, right? Because I didn't see it done anywhere else before I did it. And then I did it and I found out that, wow, somebody's actually already done that. And it's very funny to just find that we can stumble across the same things.
Yeah, some things just make sense to do.
Wow, that pattern was fucking amazing. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's his signature pattern, the Maximus, like just like.
You've played around with a lot of like switchback patterns that are similar to that. I think I've seen you do several.
Yeah. That's pretty much inspired by Armin. Actually, side note: switchbacks are invented by Armin.
Really?
Armin came up with the first. I mean, at least he was the first person to actively show them. Then maybe someone else did it before. Who knows? But he is the first one that came up with like the first switchbacks and like the first ideas of like switching. You know, like all those like switch off grips with 3-poi when you just go. There are many like mini switches before the actual switchback. He came up with that first.
Wow.
Keith Marshall was even calling them the Armin catches, I think he was calling them.
That's how you know you really were an innovator, when Keith Marshall is referring to the trick as your name. That's awesome that you know who Keith is and that you're familiar with his work. Keith, I've said this before on the podcast, but a lot of the times when people are talking about kind of like the legends of poi community and whatnot, Keith is really not mentioned as much as he should be. I mean,
yeah, it's so sad.
Yeah, it is.
He's also doing nothing to be well known. Like he's just spinning in his Scottish mountain and not caring about the world.
It's true. It's true. And I stumbled across this video the other day on Instagram, and it was 2 people spinning, this woman and this man, and I was like, wow, he looks a lot like Keith. And then I clicked on the page and I went and followed, and I'm like, it is Keith. What the fuck? This video, like they have this new like partner page. I'm like, Keith is still out here posting and hanging out. He's just not really, just doesn't really care that much, which is awesome, because he just does it for the love
Yeah.
of it, which is, you know, what makes you the best artist you can be. If you really love it and want to do it regardless of anybody looking, you're doing it for yourself. So
Definitely. Yeah, Antonia,
yeah.
his partner, is actually from Berlin as well, although they don't live in Berlin anymore. And yeah, I meet her sometime. Like she just comes around to like see her parents and everything. So I still see Antonia. Keith is a bit harder to make him move out of his mountain.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I really want to transition into a topic that I've been very excited to discuss with you. So you have publicly stated that you are not a flow artist and you don't really, in other words, quite identify with that term. Tell me more about that and how or why you make that distinction.
Hot topic.
Hot topic. Let's go.
Bam. Let's get into it. Yeah. Okay. So that's a big one. Let's try to start with the start and make something that makes sense. So first of all, the idea of flow art for me, like where I come from, like in Europe, especially at the time where I started poi and juggling in general, flow art is just not a thing. It's like there is juggling and there are many types of object manipulations. And for me, then I had heard already though about the idea of flow, like the flow state. That's something that is very present in the juggling community. It's a thing that you can do, and it's part of juggling. But I had never thought, oh, there are people like actually making that an art form. And for me, that was really strange. Yeah. So that's the first thing for me. Like I never considered myself as a flow artist because I always grew up with the idea of like I'm an object manipulator, juggler. The definition of juggling itself is also quite wide and can be discussed, but that's the word I was using. Yeah, and then and then the reason why I never picked it up as well is that it's like, why would you make an art form out of a state of mind? It's not what I'm doing, basically. It's just I'm doing juggling. It's too small. For me, it's just juggling is bigger than just flow. Because like, if I just flow, then if I get really good at flowing, I will just flow. And I always love to talk about, okay, what's the definition of flow? It's a continuous stream of movement. And it's cute. It's great. But it's just that. And there is so much more to object manipulation. There is so much more to body manipulation than just flowing. You can carry, you can put, you can fall, you can stop moving. There is so many qualities of movement that don't come along with the idea of flow. And for me, that's really, really important to like not fall in that trap, because that's what I see the most of the time with like the idea of flow art.
Well, and I mean, the things that you're doing specifically of working on this very technical and deliberate pattern that you have in mind, it's not, you're not just going to flow into 5-poi wall point cascade. You have a goal in mind and you're trying to achieve said pattern or what have you. So you're not necessarily flowing into this pattern, this extremely technical pattern. You're going into it with a specific goal and deliberately doing it, you know? So yeah. I can very much understand how you're making the distinction because, yeah, like I said, you're doing all these incredibly complicated patterns. So, and going back to the definition of juggling a little bit, I think we have talked about this before because you said at one point that I was a good poi juggler. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like what, you know, but do you consider, juggling, like, can juggling be 2 objects or does it have to be 3? Do you have to be tossing them?
That's great, thanks. That's like exactly what I was about to forget to talk about, and it's important. Yeah, it's all juggling. Poi spinning is juggling. For me, in my head at least, it is juggling, or at least it's object manipulation, and it doesn't have to be separated. It's part of it, and for me, that's really, really important. Because like a good, and that's also another thing that's, it kind of like matches up with the idea of like why I don't like flow art, is that why as soon as I start juggling with poi, people call me a flow artist. But a very good club juggler, most very good club jugglers with like 3 or 4 clubs nowadays, if you write down exactly each movement and trick they are doing over like a 5-minute sequence, I swear there will be at least 40, if not 60% of holding on to the prop more than throwing them, because they are good juggler. And a good juggler knows how to hold on to the prop brilliantly, how to drop the prop brilliantly, how to move with the prop without throwing them brilliantly. And the throwing is just one quality of movement that goes on top of it. And yeah, for me, that's why it doesn't make any sense to have this flow art separation, where apparently if you don't throw, or if you throw less, or if you swing more, it's different. No.
Yeah,
It's like,
sure.
it's like as if you were a painter that just decided that it would only paint with a triangular canvas, the same thickness of brush, and one color for the rest of his life. Oh, sad.
Yeah. So I love this, and you heard it here, folks. Poi is juggling, so you heard it. Okay, and
it's
you
either
are a
juggling.
juggler.
It's either juggling or definitely more than this idea of flow art. That's what I'm, because then you can say that, oh, juggling, what's the definition of juggling? You can go very far on that. It's like talking about the definition of art. What I want to just say is that flow art is just too little. It's cute, it's great, why not? It's a cute idea, and it's valid to some extent, but it's sad to leave it at that. That's what I mean.
So, and this goes into a topic that I did want to get into, is because there are or in my mind, traditionally there are big like cultural differences between the flow arts community and the juggling community. Whereas like early on, when I was starting back in like early 2000s, or like, almost 2010-ish area, there was a lot of like, banter, I will say, between jugglers and poi spinners. And, a lot of the sentiment, I'll just be honest to us, that poi spinners were lazy and that jugglers kind of just didn't associate with them because there's just all these hippies fucking flowering out and focusing on whatever. So tell me a little bit about like the differences that you see between the flow arts community and the juggling community, benefits or negatives or anything like that.
So what I see in the juggling community, it's such a weird question for me. All right, I think what I see is that, yes, jugglers that don't identify with the idea of flow arts and do clubs, rings, and balls will be extremely focused on pushing juggling as a thing that they are lifting up, versus flow artists or people that are around that idea, that community that calls themselves like this. They will be more focused on this idea of self-discovery, self-lifting experience, kind of like it's like a self thing. I don't know, there is another word in English for that. Like, when you do yoga, it's like a self practice. So it's a very like positive ego-based practice, which, it's very internal. It doesn't lift the practice and the art kinda as its own thing. Which, therefore, why would you of course, then why would you push the technical aspect? It makes sense that it's not necessarily some people will think that pushing the technical aspect is what brings them to flow, or whatever it is that makes them feel good and in this mindset of flow. Therefore, some flow artists will keep pushing the technical aspect, and some won't, because they only care about what makes them feel this mindset of flow, because that's what they're looking for.
Exactly. Actually doing it and having fun with the process, and not necessarily like me having fun depends on how many patterns I can learn or how technical of what I'm doing is. And I feel like as the years have gone by, I've fallen more out of the just doing it because I love it and more into the category of really pushing myself, because let's be honest, I don't enjoy picking up my poi thousands of times a day. It is work. I'm trying to attain a certain goal, and a lot of it is not fun. A lot of it's very frustrating. So it's definitely fallen more into the pursuit and the dedicated part of me that is not necessarily just doing it out of pure joy and fun the whole time. And it is very accomplishing to get a certain pattern that you're working on, but the whole time isn't fun, right?
It's not.
Very frustrating.
It shouldn't be fun. If it's fun, you fucked up. If it's fun, you completely. If you do it for the fun, it's like, it sounds really harsh what I'm saying, but it's like, if you do it for the fun, don't expect any positive result like on the long term. It's gonna be fun for like a few months. It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be like playing video games. It's cool. But don't expect any actual results if you're doing it for the fun of it. For me, that's like really what I like to say in my workshop. It should be painful. It's like It's how it is. Because, and you know why? It's because if you don't get into it with that mindset, then you're not experiencing, even if we come back to this idea of like just self-experience, even with that, you will not experience the fullest if you don't take your ego, throw it outside, and just fucking go for it. You will not experience the full experience of juggling or whatever it is. That's really how I see it. It's like it's bigger than you. It's just bigger than you. If you just stay in yourself and try to juggle, it will just be juggling as yourself. If you take your ego and get it out, then it will be juggling as juggling or whatever it is, which is so much bigger.
Yeah, and I think this is a very important topic to get into, because there has been a lot of again, like animosity, maybe in some artists and some jugglers. There has been a little bit of talks of like, essentially just we're better than you and we know it, and to a certain extent I fucking understand. Like, I get it. I'm just a pole spinner.
That's not good though. Like because like in the end, like for me, because like what I just said may seem like, oh, I'm defending like jugglers are all doing what I just said. No, that's not true. Like some jugglers are also like not necessarily having the right mindset around juggling and whatever. So I kind of like got off track there. In the end, it's just everyone is doing their own thing in the best way they think they are doing it, and it's great. And no, it's not good when some jugglers are saying telling the guy that does dragon stuff that it's lame what he's doing. I've never actually seen that happen, to be honest. Like, I mean, in France, we like to be super sarcastic and like throw bad jokes at each other anyways. Like, it happens, like, no matter, like, if you're a Diabolo player or a club juggler, you will get shit thrown at you anyways.
Which is how it should be. There should be a friendly banter. But more along the lines of like people that I know that were attending like EJC or these kind of bigger, more prestigious juggling events where there were artists in our local community that wanted to go to Fire Drums or these local flow arts festivals. So, and it, sure, maybe it might not have manifested on the level that I'm portraying it to be, but, locally in our friend circle, there kind of was like a little bit of a division and, a little bit of like, we're better than you kind of shit. But, as Poi,
sorry. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a buildup of like both sides trying to like, and that's also, again, like why I'm like, flow art is so sad, because it's like, it pushes, it's like those people gave up and just left and decided to like not try to stay together as juggling. So it's kind of like as much the fault of like those old school club jugglers that don't understand that object is object and whatever it is just still an object, as those hippies that think that this thing is different and they felt bad because this guy is mean, therefore they left. So I think it's kind of like 50-50. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a childish thing of like, why?
Yeah, it's true. I like that you can appreciate all the different objects and the different object manipulators that are kind of inherently under the same large umbrella when you really think about it, because like you just saying, object is an object, and what you're doing with it is like inherently unique, whatever you're doing. So I like there to be more unity around poi jugglers and or poi spinners and the juggling community as a whole, and I think it's starting to get that way. Mainly because of poi jugglers like yourself, and the poi community kind of becoming more knowledgeable, and it's spreading to various parts of the world where people are taking it more seriously and have that mindset that you were talking about. And I feel like it's the reason that we're seeing incredible poi jugglers pop out of Japan, out of various parts of Mexico and
Japan,
Latin America, Europe, Chile. Dude.
Yeah.
Dude, what is Chile on right now? Seriously. But like, we're seeing all these jugglers, poi jugglers specifically, come out of these places. And I think it does have a lot to do with the mindset and the reason why we're pursuing what we're doing. And these people that I just mentioned are trying to pursue it at the highest level, in terms of just like any other juggler, so it's very interesting to see cultural differences in the way that they manifest.
One last note. I think also what doesn't help is that, especially in the States, because let's be like very pragmatic there, the flow art community is mainly a United States thing. There is like the juggling and the circus community in the United States was very much for super long time, and still nowadays, based on entertainment and comedy. versus in Europe, very quickly it became contemporary circus dance. It's like more
Mm-hmm.
art on this, like on the
Mm-hmm.
side of like contemporary art or like art in general, which makes it that, of course, then in Europe, when ⴍᴜᴜ and Ronan McLaughlin started using contact poi as like a thing to just do juggling, there wasn't that much of a pushback because we were already used to like many different circus artists creating different things that are outside of the rings, balls, and clubs thing, or making jokes with like 3 apples and eating them. Because we were already used to this idea. It's like already like a part of the community to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Versus in the States is still more focused on this idea of like rings, balls, clubs, comedy juggling. So that's why I guess it was harder for those people that wanted in the States to like use different props and everything, so poi, etc. And there would be like more pushbacks there. I think that's what made it that there is such a separation, I guess.
Yeah, so I really appreciated the response. And even though you don't necessarily identify or accept the term as a flow artist, you do attend flow arts festivals in the United States and across the world, Australia and what have you. So tell me a little bit about some of your maybe a favorite experience or some of the things that you love about attending these festivals, and how does that affect you?
There's lots. So like in the past 3 years, I've done quite a few juggling festivals and flow art festivals, and most of the time I like to see now that there's like juggling and flow art. It's like clearly like more like blended. For example, in Australia, like last like 3 weeks ago, I was at the Circus Spin Festival, like Spin Circus Festival. It's like it's called Spin Circus, which is great, and it's organized by circus people, but it's also including flow art people. So it's kind of like I like that this kind of like, oh yeah, all of this is in there, and it's great. And yeah, it's been such a blast to be able to like travel around with juggling and be asked to like go perform and teach people and just randomly get like a message from a person and like, hey, would you like to go to Ohio next week? I'm like, okay.
So you just got back from Australia and you got to kick it with another poi legend, somebody that we had just briefly mentioned the other day, being Tim Goddard. How is Australia, and how is it able to collaborate with such an innovative and a great mind in the poi community?
Yay. So yeah, it's actually the second time I come to Australia. I was there last year for like the exact same thing. I kind of like did the exact same 3 weeks that I did last year, which is kind of sad, but I mean, like it's still great. Like I feel like I should have visited like other cities in Australia. But yeah, I was therefore booked for this festival, Spin Circus Festival, last year and this year again. And Tim was there and Ben Cooper as well was there. And so last year I got to meet the both of them, which was such a blast. So I spent like a week at Ben's house and then a week at Tim's house, and then we did like festivals together. And yeah, this year I just came to like redo the exact same thing, although I spent only some time at Tim's and I couldn't make it to Ben's, but that was already good. And yeah, Tim is like probably the last person in the poi community that's actually just does poi spinning mainly. Like he also does poi juggling, but like his main focus is poi spinning, that I actually enjoy watching, to be honest. I think it's like he's the only person that does it right. I think I'm not okay with what I just said, but like you got what I mean.
I get you. Well, and we have a very particular mind, and I understand. I would say that Tim spinning, there's something different about the way he spins. Like I've seen his juggling and all is great, and his contact is amazing, but when he's just has the poi in his hand and he's spinning, he really just hits the patterns with a level of execution and a perfection that is truly not common. I mean, I cannot think of anybody else. I mean, he's definitely a one of a kind of individual. So I'm sure that was just a lot of fun being able to collaborate with him.
Yeah, such a great understanding of the mechanic of ropes and weights in movements. That's like like I have like, for example, like side note, like I have like all those mess pattern, like all the Mills messes and sub messes and all this research I have with poi, and I made it so that for each of those juggling pattern, I knew what was the 2 poi spun equivalent of them. So for example, the 3 poi Mills mess, to make it short, is basically a 2-poi forward weave. And so I know for each of the messes which is the way to make them spinning. And there is one that I never could understand what would be the spinning equivalent of it. And Tim just found it, like took him 10 minutes. And he was like, oh yeah, it's this thing. I was like, yo. And yeah, just side note, but I think it's like that was kind of like one of my highlights of like this trip actually. He just literally finally managed to like point me towards the direction of that one little foundation that made me understand what I was doing.
That's great. Shout out to Tim. I do plan on having Tim on the podcast, very soon. Keep in mind for that. But Tim has been one of my favorite artists for a long time, even going back to when he first released Predator Poi and how he kind of was, being more well known in the community and whatnot. So he's been at it for a long time. I don't mean to backtrack too much. I'm just curious, what year did you start poi spinning?
That's a hard question. I should actually look it up for real at some point, but I'm pretty sure it was like 2015, 2016, like summer 2015, probably, or like 2016.
Okay, that checks out. But you were already such a good poi juggler, or excuse me,
Did you
just a ball
already know
juggler.
the answer and you wanted to know if I would like?
Maybe. Because, I've definitely done deep dives. I remember one day I was like, I'm just going to go all the way back and play Bo's like first videos from when he first started posting. It's a lot of fun if you guys... Well, I was fascinated and very curious by your beginnings because, I mean, dude, seriously, I am pretty up to date as far as who's kind of like popping off in the community, who's becoming more well-known, whose work is on the forefront and all that. And you came out of nowhere, man. You came out of nowhere. Like, and sure, you were just, a juggler and you were doing your thing behind the scenes for a long time. But as far as, I mean, one of the people that have just come onto the scene the quickest and the amount of time that it took you to become the more well-known person in the community was pretty crazy, man. So you came out of nowhere and just like exploded onto the scene in a lot of ways. So I did want to see the early beginnings and what you were doing back, when you were first getting started. So very interesting.
5 clubs in RM pants and with dreadlocks.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, so you were creating a poi juggling collaboration video actively, and you're looking at posting that here soon. Tell me a little bit about that project and the motivation behind getting this collaboration video together.
Actually, not a lot of stuff to talk about, but like, it's just a cool thing that I really want to do because, in general, I haven't seen any actual 3-poi jugglers collaboration video yet, and it would be a great idea to have that. A kind of like a little symbolic, hey, 3-poi juggling is a thing, or like, of course, like as you have seen, like in the message I sent you, like it's not just juggling. Like you can send a 3-poi spinning sequence, and I'm okay with it. The idea is to have 3-poi stuff in there. It's like a big thing in like the Diabolo community. Every year they have the Diabolo collaboration video that comes out every year. There's like one forum in which they organize this. The Japanese jugglers have this. Like every year there is a 3-ball Japanese juggler collaboration, 4-ball. Like they have like 5 different collaboration for each type or something. I thought it would be cute to have like the same thing for 3-poi manipulation.
Nice.
So I try to start the trend.
Will you consider doing a 4-poi collaboration video?
A 4-poi? That would be great. I don't think there would be enough variety yet to do an interesting video out of it. I have hopes for like in a year or two.
That's fair.
I think we need to let it ripen a bit.
I'll keep working on my 4-poi. I'll keep working on it. So tell us some advice that you might have for newer poi jugglers or just artists in general that are trying to improve, and talk a little bit about kind of the mindset that you have as far as improving, and possibly any pointers that you could give somebody. So
first thing first, watch Naruto. Read and watch Naruto, and then come back to juggling. Sorry. No, like no kidding. Naruto, I wouldn't be where I'm at without Naruto right now.
That's so cool.
It's really a big thing. But like to be like more serious, I think is just figure out what you love. Do you actually love it, and are you willing to just put everything of yourself into that? And if you act, and then if you're not willing, it's just going to be very obvious. It's like if you actually love what you're doing, then just do it 100%. Just try everything. Just go and figure out who is good at it, and go check out what they're doing, and ask them questions. And
going off that topic, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's been times in my life when I'm going through, because I've spun poi for a long time, and I did a lot of, two poi. I've only been into three poi for a couple years, but anyways, I did two poi for a long time, and there was points throughout my life that I was questioning, why am I doing this, and like, am I wasting time? What, I've been dumping thousands of hours into this one thing. What is it going to lead to? Like, what? And the consensus that I came to over the years is because I truly do love it, and it's a part of my growth as an artist, and I really don't care if it leads anywhere necessarily, if I'm not like successful or whatever because of it. I just truly love it, and it's something that you do run into. If you've been doing it long enough, there's going to be doubts that you have of, why am I doing this? And the result of these questions always came back to, no, fuck that, I'm gonna do it. I'm not wasting time. This is a part of like my life and what I want to do. So
and it comes back to what I was talking about earlier, of like, it's a bigger thing, and you have to believe in it as a bigger thing than you, and you can't see the end of it, and it's not something that's inside of you. It's just so much bigger, and you should just serve it the most you can, and believe in it, and go for it. And
I really appreciate that.
Just practice as much as you can. Just practice smart, practice better, practice longer, catch better.
Damn, called out. I feel personally called out on that one. But yeah, so let's talk about some of the other favorite videos that you might have as far as juggling, because it was funny, I asked you about these your favorite videos of somebody necessarily, and you gave me a lot of old or obscure videos that were not even necessarily poi related. They were like ball juggling related, or like, what is this poi? Is this even poi?
We have the god of poi before contact poi was even invented here. He's called Ruslan Fomenko. Is either Russian or Ukrainian. It's not really clear. And he was already juggling 5 meteors with the same pattern that ᴑᴜᴜ used to use for 5 poi. Not exactly the same, actually. He was using overturns, but whatever. Way before, I think like in 1990s, he was already juggling 5 meteors on stage, basically. We'll see it like towards the end of the video, he juggles 5 out of the kick up. Like, it's like insane shit. And like at the start of the video, you're like, yo, what the fuck? Like, he's just like swinging, and like, we don't have the music right now, but I invite people to like go check out. The music is hilarious. It's like super traditional style. And like, here he's starting to juggle, like, since the meteor, like he gets right into 4. And that video is from like 2000 or something.
97.
97, see, like super old, and he was already juggling for like at least 10 years at that point, if not more.
Wow.
And
I have seen this video before, but it was not even, it was probably less than a year ago that somebody sent me this video. But just the early exploration of poi juggling, when it wasn't even considered to be poi at this time.
He had already figured out everything. We are so lame. Look at him. I'm like, for me, I really need to meet that guy at some point, because he's still performing. He's not that old, because here in that video he's like super young. Like at some point there is like a zoom in on his face. He's like super young. He must be like 17 or 18 at that point. He's still performing, and I really want to like meet him and ask him like, who taught you, or like, where did you get the idea from? Like, what was the why?
Like, seriously. Because a lot of us, we have references to take. I can see you juggling, and I'm like, okay, I want to learn this pattern, whatever, and we can take a lot of the inspiration from each other. But people in the early days, they didn't necessarily have that person, because they were the person to make the discovery and start pushing it in this certain way. So
and for him, it's like, I don't know if we passed it already, but like in the video at some point, he already does flats with the meteor. He does flat throws. At that time, doing flat throws with clubs was already kind of like, oh wow, you're original. He was already doing it with ropes. It's like, isn't that crazy? And like my friend Anya, you probably have seen her at some point in one of my posts. We did some collaboration. She's an Ukrainian poi juggler. knows him and has tried these meteors, and she told me they are long and super fucking heavy, so it's like hard to use stuff. Like,
Wow.
yeah, so yeah, Ruslan is like one of my biggest inspiration ever when it comes to like just poi, for like poi juggling, because like yeah, we're nothing compared to him.
Absolutely wild, yeah. And you said that they are very quite heavy, and which kind of, I don't mean to stray too far off subject or topic, but and tell me, what do you think is really quickly, what is the most like optimal set or like length
Mhm.
or whatever dimension for you? Like, what do you prefer?
So I've definitely changed my set quite a bit over the years. Yeah, just for a bit, can we have a moment?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This 5 meteor right there for like 30 catches on stage with like a massive. Finally, like yeah, he doesn't care. Whatever.
Oh
So
my
yeah, boy.
God.
Like he was performing that like on a daily basis as like a performer. Like anyways, so poi, I started with like the play juggling. Like the first contact poi I had was the play juggling poi. I don't know if you've seen them. They are like really like just play juggling stage ball, whatever stage ball they were doing at that time,
Mhm.
but very thin polyester, mildly flexible, like quite flexible actually rope,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
not like cotton, like like not smooth either.
Sure.
And the play juggling knob. And as so far, like no, the only thing I kept is the play juggling knob, because the play juggling knob is like the best knob for poi that has ever been done. Like I'm set on that, so you can't make me move. It's like somehow Davide is the name of the designer of play juggling. Had
Mhm.
no clue what he was doing when he created this poi, because he has no clue what poi is. But he did the first try perfect on the knob. The rest of the poi was like, but yeah.
Got
So
the
I
knob
started.
though.
So I started with that, and I learned most of my. I think the first 3.0 bit cascade I learned was with this thing. I even started like doing 360s and pirouettes with that. But I was like, oh shit, it's so wobbly. At some point, I was like, yeah, I need to like change the rope. So I changed to like whatever climbing rope I could find the easiest near me. So I just switched out the rope, and then I realized there was some better quality stage balls. So I just switched out the stage ball, and I realized there were some lighter stage balls. So like the 180 grams from Net Juggler ᴰᴜᴜᴜᴜ.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I switched to this, and that ended up being more or less the set I have now. Apart from the fact that now I upgraded to like a better static rope, better quality static rope,
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
could find it
Now, as
with
far as
time.
length goes, what length do you prefer?
So yeah, I started with like at first I had like really long poi. Like first time I was doing like 3 poi juggling, I was like super long, like probably the length I have now actually, funnily enough. And like when I met Theo Azule actually, he has like him and Gustav, his like duo partner,
Mhm.
had like the tiniest poi in the universe, like about a few centimeters smaller than a club, with the static rope, which made it like just like it's just a chunky bit of thing. And I was really impressed by them at the start. So I was like, oh yes, and I was like 17 or something. So I was like, oh okay, so I will do this too.
Yeah.
So I switched to like this tiny ass boy, and I think it did help me to like kind of like cheat my way into getting a bit more juggling right away and like
Mhm.
progressing for sure.
Mhm.
But at some point, I hit a plateau very quickly because short poi is just too short, and you just can't use the momentum properly. You're just lacking many things. Um,
Interesting.
so I switched to like longer poi first of all for just the beauty aspect, because it's just such
It does look better.
it's
That's
like
the biggest
yeah.
thing. It's the biggest thing
That's
is it does look a lot better because it's embracing the like makeup of what you're doing. Like poi,
it's yeah.
one of the reasons it's the most like aesthetically appealing prop in my opinion, and the reason that I love it is because of the length and it looks
Yeah.
different than clubs. So like you're just why would I be juggling fucking string clubs when I could be juggling poi? Like I want them
Definitely,
longer.
definitely. That's so like that was the thing, the beauty aspect. That also I had switched to like more actual static ropes, because the first static rope I had I thought were static, but actually they were like type B semi-static. Like I'm not gonna know that about ropes,
Mhm,
but like,
mhm.
not actual static ropes. So when I switched to like actual static rope, I was like, oh, this is really stiff, like even for my taste. So making them longer had like the overall feel of the poi was better. Sorry.
Mm,
And that, and also for 5 poi, for the 5 poi, like my main reason for like going that long is for 5 and 6 poi. because otherwise the pattern is just so fast. So fast. And you
And
can't
speed.
yeah, and you can't
Yes.
accumulate the momentum that's required to keep a circular, at least for no beats. I guess if I had stayed like doing like doubles and maybe it would be different. But for the no beat technique, you really need, like, the bigger the pattern, the bigger the object, to be able to have like a ratio that's like proper.
Yeah, that makes sense, because when you add length or take away length from your poi, it's a speed differential, even if you're only using 2, right? So with 3, that makes sense that the patterns that you're going for, you have to have it a little bit longer, because it's very sped up when it's short, whereas with a longer poi, it's like very drawn out, longer, because there's more space that it has to cover.
And then if you want to be like super picky, therefore now the set I have isn't the ideal ratio for just 3 poi, but 3 poi is easier, therefore it's fine. You know what I mean? It's like I want the ratio to be closer to the ideal for the harder stuff, and then the easier stuff, I don't care. I can just like figure it out. Like
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. So I do want to get into your training regimen a little bit, and if you could tell us a little bit about what your ideal training day looks like when everything goes perfectly, because not all days are good. Tell us what a good day looks like for you at your studio in Berlin.
So first of all, whether it's a good day or a bad day, it pretty much 70% looks the same, because it's not an excuse. Unless of course I'm like puking in bed and like then here I will just stay in bed. But if I'm able to stand up, then most of my training will be the same, apart from then some various things. So like I'm gonna get into it. Like most of my training are like between 6 and 9 hours, depending of like the phase I'm in. Like summers in general tend to be like shorter training, and winters longer training, but it really varies from day to day. But I have this 5-hour chunk. That's like the start of my training, where I pretty much know every single thing I'm gonna do. Where I go through, so like start of my training, pick up, like warm up a little bit my wrist and everything, pick up 3 poi. I go for all the preparative side swaps, so like preparative patterns that will prepare me for like 5 poi. So like all the 5 poi height stuff with 3 poi. Then I do like 100 catches of each of these ones. Then I do the same thing with 4 poi. All of the preparative patterns I have for 5 poi, I do them with 4. And I go for like about 100 catches each, plus run through every single pattern I can think of with 4 poi in like kind of like sequences to just build up endurance and like, just juggle as much as I can till I get exhausted, and like try to solidify all of the pattern with 4, and then move on to 5, do all the things I want to work on with 5. That's like about an hour and a half. Then go for like 6 poi, and then after 6 poi, I just go for like specific pattern that I want to work on. This new sub mess with 4 poi with 1 side swap on top of it. That's another thing. So I always have like those specific tricks where I'm gonna spend time on there, and there is no questioning it. I will do it. Then I will go through all of the body throws with 3 poi. So that's going to be like an hour or 2 of just doing all the body throws with 3 poi and making them as solid as possible. And then finally, after those 5 hours, it's like more or less 5 hours in total, of like doing all those stuff that I do every single day for like that many catches to make it super solid. So it's kind of like my base, my technical base. Then I'm like, okay, what do I feel like creating today? Or like, what do I feel like doing? So maybe I'm just going to try some more different tricks because I feel like nerding out on new tricks. Or I'm going to do some more improvisation with like dancing based stuff. Or I'm going to do a completely different prop, like ball juggling. So in general, like it's like I have those 5 hours that are like super set and there is no questioning it. And then there is like 2, 3, 4 hours more where it's like whatever I feel like
I
playing.
like that. I like that a lot because it opens the door for your flow artist side to be more innovative and creative, and so kind of improvs. I like that you mentioned and touched on improvisation because you do have a very abstract way of spinning 2 poi or using 2 poi, because the way that you do it is very different from any of the other poi artists that I've seen or the community is used to seeing. So very much more abstract and not traditional is the way that I would describe it. So I feel like that time in your regiment where you're kind of leaving it open to the table of like what you're feeling and what you want to do and improv, I feel like is very important. But you are very dedicated and very specific in the things that you do want to train and hammer out very intentionally. So I knew that was going to be a response, but you guys at home have to realize when you see his videos and you're like, oh my gosh, I could never, this is so crazy, I couldn't do it. But it's like you could if you put the amount of hours that this man puts in. And that's what it boils down to. He's not just like, of course you are a very special person in general to be able to do that and execute it, but it's hours, it's your dedication towards the patterns that you're trying to learn. And it's thousands of hours over multiple years of your life that you're putting in that serious time into. And that's the difference between, I'm going to try this for an hour today, I'm going to try this for maybe 30 minutes tomorrow, or they're very different.
I think that's like, and so like to add like something maybe to like the question that I didn't quite fully answer earlier, is like to like something I would say to like younger poi jugglers or people like getting into poi, just be fucking specific about what you're doing. If you're not specific about what you're doing at every single point of your training or even your day in general, you just lost. It's like you're at the scrolling on Instagram state. It's the same thing, even if you're juggling. Just be specific about what am I doing right now? Why, how, when, for how long, and like for which, just be specific every time. And that's going to lead you like so much further.
And, I have these days in the studio where I'm really trying to hammer out a new juggling pattern or what have you. And then sometimes I just want to spin. And there's that part of me that still just does it for like the enjoyment of doing it. And I feel like I use those times to try to be more creative and let myself open up new doors that I didn't realize were there. But sometimes I feel like I'm wasting time. I'm like, fuck, I'm just doing things that I already know how to do. I could be working on something that I don't know how to do. But it's very hard trying to balance dedication and the extremely specific work, or I'm trying to learn new patterns, because they're very different mindsets.
Okay, on that I think also it's important to be specific about, okay, maybe right now I don't want to be specific. Be specific about it.
Yeah, okay.
It's important to leave yourself space for, okay, here I'm not too sure, and it's fine, but how long it's gonna last, or you have this space for it, and then you just close the parenthesis and move on. I think that's quite important. And even when you're not like, even if you're just doing some, I guess flow is the term that's you use then. Sorry. I really don't want to seem like, I feel like
no.
So
I get it.
Just a reminder that English is not it's like my 3rd/4th language. So I may not like exactly mean the thing I meant, but whatever. Even when you're like doing some kind of like flow state approach, it can be positive as long as you're specific about the way you do it. You can be like, okay, I'm just gonna do whatever right now, but my approach is to use as much the space as possible. Or right now I'm doing whatever I want, but I'm gonna really focus on the rope right now. The rope, like just you can be very gentle about your specificism. You don't need to be like, right now I am doing 4.360s into 7s. This is what. No, you don't have. You can be very gentle, but yeah, you can push things like what my approach is like. You can push things plus 1000%, but you can also push things minus 1000%, or minus forward 1000% plus diagonal 1000%, whatever. You have many ways of pushing very specific. Like what I'm not saying you should be training hard in like the technical stuff plus poi plus mega hard because cool. No, that's not what I mean. Like you have many ways of pushing, and it's important to be open to it, and there is no wasting time as long as you do it with focus and specificities.
For sure. And I really like that you touched on that, because sometimes I am, again, I'm working on very specific things, but sometimes I do want to embrace the improv. And I feel like the improv is where you're creating things and finding these little tricks or patterns that make you the most unique. Like it's a part of who you are as an artist. And these times that I've left it open and I found the patterns that I love the most. So, but that's mainly 2-poi for me. So 3-poi has kind of been a very different approach.
I think also 2-poi. Let me know if it goes for too long on the topic.
No, don't work.
Like I very much don't work on 2-poi stuff. I never work on 2-poi stuff, nor 1-poi stuff actually, because I think what makes good 2-poi manipulation and 1-poi manipulation, whether it's spinning, throwing, manipulation, whatever, it's body posture, it's body awareness, it's space awareness, it's quality of movement. It's not about the object itself. If you can work, if you have other ways to work on that, then whenever you will pick up 2 point or 1 point, it just works. So yeah, dance classes.
I love that. That's very applicable to myself as well, because yeah, your boy needs to move a little bit.
It's like the 1 point, the 2 point, especially nowadays with this manipulation style, we are mainly holding on to the object. So like, there is no technique. Come on, and you don't need it. Even someone, as long as you have like a fair basic amount of plane control, understanding of where the rope can go, if you do that, you don't need to be a crazy technical poi juggler or poi spinner to understand how to do good 2 point, 1 point stuff at all. And it goes for any object. Give one ball to a dancer and leave it alone for an hour, you will see the magic. You'll be like, yo, how long have you been juggling?
Very true.
It's just
very true. So this is a great segue. I'm sure that you're familiar with this segment that we have on the podcast, but we're making a little bit of a change. So we have fans write in questions and they ask, for us to ask the guest live on air. So the change is now Joey will actually be asking these questions to the guest now. So he will be taking over for just a quick moment to ask you the question. And we'll see.
Cool.
But I'll let Joey go ahead and take over.
What's up, Bo?
Hello.
Completely 1,000,000% agree with you watching Naruto, because it's the thing. I was rallying over here. So Kelly, or Down to Jelly, asked, what inspires your storytelling within your performances?
Okay, story. A big statement here. I don't do storytelling, at least not on purpose. Then it's beautiful if people see storytelling through it. I just focus on serving the movement and the juggling the best I can, and it creates short stories. Short stories. And for me, that's like, I see short stories as kind of like the contrary of flow, if that makes sense. Flow is the continuous stream of movement. Short stories is like, oh, this thing is happening, oh, done, that's it. Oh, and now there is this thing. It's like the kid in the kindergarten just found a rock, and now he's a nurse babysitting the rock, and then he's gonna go lick the floor because it's an ice cream, and then it's so much more beautiful. and in there is some flow, there is many qualities of movement that happen, but it's and I guess that's what people sometimes see as storytelling. I'm not too sure what I think about the idea of storytelling, but I guess that answers the question.
I would kind of take it as an approach of conveying emotion. That's the way that I want to start building my performances, is conveying an emotion. And more often than not, frustration is very tied into my story. Like we were talking about earlier, I'm motivated a lot of the times by the fact that I can't do it, and I get frustrated because I can't do a certain pattern or whatever. So that is a motivation for me, and I want to convey frustration and just discontent as being a very huge factor in what drives me. It's very interesting. But yeah, I would say more conveying emotion is what I would get down to storytelling.
Yeah, it's a thing that happens as well, and it's great as well. But like sometimes I'm also like the whole like emotion thing. Also, I'm just there like, it's great, but I'm really not sure what I think of all those people that like every time after my act they're like, oh, I cried watching your acts. I'm like, thanks. It's like at first I was like, oh, I made people cry, I did good job, and now I'm just there like, after a while I'm just there like, I'm not too sure if that's actually good.
The reason that I would think that people would see a performance like that and literally be driven to tears is because when you see something in person, or you see somebody's performance, it's really just it's a percentage of their life that went dedicated towards this specific thing. I feel like that's more of what would make me emotional watching it, is because I know that this man has spent X amount of percentage of his whole life working on this specific thing. So I think just kind of giving your life towards an art is very beautiful. And so I think that would be why I would possibly tear up if I saw you perform, because it's fucking insane.
That's the beauty of juggling, is that there is, in like many art forms, that there is so many powerful ways of providing emotional triggers somehow through art. It's kind of crazy, but like, yeah, big topic.
So we'll kind of move towards closing things out here, but before we do, I do want to get into any kind of like goals that you have for your future, as far as patterns you want to learn, or performances that you want to do, or classes that you want to teach. I'll just kind of leave it open more for you. What kind of goals do you have?
So as for goals, I'll just keep doing the juggling thing. And it's great. But to be more specific and interesting, I have I'm really into pushing the 5 and 6 boy stuff, getting into flashing 7. I had like 1-2 training this week, started trying it. It's gonna work. But it's not my priority yet. Mainly just making 5 and 6 a bit more neat, and like being able to do more stuff in there. And so that's like, technically speaking, my main thing, pushing more the sedma stuff and windmill stuff with more objects. I really like it, like 4 and 5. Apart from that, I'm really happy. I'm gonna probably perform in Japan again this year, so it's really exciting for the national convention there, the JJF. And I'm getting more into actual performing, because my friend Stefan Sink, it's a long story. Like, Stefan Singh is like a really good ball juggler, like kind of like a pioneer of like contemporary juggling in Europe. And he has a company called Critical Mess, and I started like working with them. And at first it was more like, hey, can you just come and help us to like create this new show and everything, as like a extra person to create the show but not to perform. And it transformed into like, actually, we're gonna need you to perform in the show as well. So like I'm starting to like get in the company where we're working on this new show, which is a ball juggling show. I did send you a link for it if you want to put it out very quickly.
Yeah, I would love to take a look at this, because again, this is, influences that are less about poi and more about juggling, because you are a juggler, and you're not going to take all your inspiration from poi spinners, because you're doing it very different than anybody's doing it. That's just kind of what it is. But we'll see if Joey can pull it up. Say it one more time.
Critical Mess.
Critical Mass. Yeah. Okay. He's pulling that up.
And it's been really exciting, because like most of the people in that company are actually really good friends of mine, that I just jam and hang out in Berlin with. So it's so cool to like create something with them. This video is like the old version of the show that I wasn't a part of, and now creating a new version, which I recently joined. Which
beautiful. And dude, I really want to say, like, as weird as this might sound, thank you for kind of bringing poi more in the realm of jugglers, and putting poi out there in a more, because again, for a long time, jugglers, I feel like en masse, have not necessarily like wanted to respect poi in the same way that they respect ball juggling or club juggling. And I feel like the level that you're taking poi juggling now, it's undeniable. I mean, it's really undeniable. So I'm really glad that you're collaborating with more serious jugglers, and getting into this
serious
sphere.
Juggers.
It's true, man. It's true.
Random hippies.
Yeah. What a cool video. This has been awesome. So abstract. All these people only have like, what is it, 2 balls? Or for a segment?
It's mostly the show kind of evolved, but like the whole thing is like, it's 7 people, maximum 2 balls per people. So like you'll have 14 hands, 14 balls maximum on stage. And the idea is, so like the new show is called Super Organism, and it's really exciting. Stefan, so the director, is creating it so that it's really just about an organism, and there is no individuality in the show. Like, you're never on your own doing a solo thing. It's just we are constantly together being an organism, which is very interesting. I'm really looking forward to working with them.
Yeah, what a powerful idea, because nowadays we are all very connected in a lot of ways. The internet was primarily, but as far as spreading knowledge and creating new things that people can also build off of, we are also very connected, and it's more of a community based thing. So I'm loving that that's being displayed in this performance, because that's a very important idea.
It's so crazy to work. It's like my first time ever like working with other people for like stage stuff. Like, most of my stage stuff has been like solo so far, and it's so crazy to like be constantly with like 6 other people on stage, and like such a different awareness that you have to like, you need to be able to catch at any point, and like have eyes everywhere. It's really stressful in a way. So like, I'm really grateful for that experience.
Awesome. Well, is there any topics that you didn't necessarily get to cover, or any ideas that you wanted to convey before we close it down? I'm curious if we did miss anything.
I don't think so. I think we did a pretty good job there.
I think we did. And I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of the project. It's, very important to me for us to be able to discuss these things in longer form, because too often we're just left with a 60-second clip of someone doing something, but that it's thousands of hours, and it's like, well, there's nobody talking about it. So, yeah, thank you for being a part of the podcast. I would love to have you on at some point again, down the road, a year or whatever, a couple months, and chat more about juggling or something, different topics that you'd like to get into. But Joey's popping off. All right. But we'll throw up all your tags here in the descriptions, and y'all know where to find Bo, of course. So thank you for being a part of it. Yeah, for real. Check out Bo on Patreon. This man is an incredible teacher. He has so many videos on juggling and everything in between. So make sure to check him out and support him in any way that you can. That would be great. Thanks, Bo.
Bye. Thank you.